Before punk, before metal, before distortion pedals, one song changed everything. The Kinks didn't just write a hit in 1964, they wrote a song that shaped generations of rock music to come. Welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. You're here with your host Laz Michaelides and my co-host on the screen opposite me, Mr. Felipe Amarin. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, man, and you?
Good, yeah, very well, thank you, very well. Got a bout of lovely weather in England this week, don't we? I love that. Isn't that just such a default British thing to do? We just go straight talk about the weather.
Yeah, we got it. That's first thing, and then we're going to talk about train times.
Exactly, yeah, exactly, and how expensive things have got in Tesco's. So yeah, excellent. Right.
Yeah, we've done. That's the whole conversation.
That's it. Yeah, no need for anything else.
We can all go home.
So, today we're talking about "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks. One of the most famous rock songs in rock history. I mean, what do you, first of all, before we get into the little aspects of it, what are your thoughts about the song?
I love the song. It's so straight to the point. It's a fun song. It's not pretentious. It's just a song. It's just something you listen to and it makes you want to sing along and dance and it always puts a smile on my face, that song.
Yeah, it is one of those songs.
Great riff.
And the Kinks are one of my favorite bands as well. I truly believe that they're one of those underappreciated bands that really deserved a lot more credit than they got. I mean, I think you've got those top three, haven't you? You've got the Beatles, the Who, and the Rolling Stones, who people say shaped popular music in the 60s, and I really I have a strong case that the Kinks deserve to be there as well.
I think as the other three, they made it into the American market easily, and I think the Kinks were some people would say they're too British for the American market. Some people say that they were just not commercial enough with their attitude and stuff.
Well, I also heard that there was a dispute maybe with the brothers and the management, or something happened where they were planning an American tour. And then the brothers had an argument and the tour collapsed and they never made it to America. So as you said,
they needed the breakthrough in America. Maybe never actually happened.
Maybe a problem.
And I think maybe that's the only reason why they're not as famous as the other top three that you mentioned.
I think that's a fair thing, yeah. Anyway, I'll give you the details of the song really quickly. So the song was released on the 4th of August, 1964, recorded the month before at the IBC studio in London. Genre, I mean, I think a nice simple one is it's rock music, especially for the time it was released. It's rock music. However, there's been some others attributed to it. Some people have said garage rock, proto-punk, hard rock, proto-metal, which we'll get into. The song is 2 minutes and 20 seconds long, released on the Pi label in the UK and the Reprise label in the US. And it was written by Ray Davies and produced by Shel Talmy. So, first thing I want to talk about is the obvious characteristic aspect of this song, which is the power chords. Now, for those who don't know, a power chord is where you play, it's a chord. But what chords normally do in music is you can play a major chord and a minor chord. A major chord sounds happy and a minor chord sounds sad. A power chord, however, removes the characteristic of whether it's happy or sad.
Which is the third, isn't it? So you have the major third and the minor third. That actually gives the chord its characteristics. And when you remove that, you have that very specific raw sound that you can't tell if it's major or minor. You can when you analyze the overall picture of the song, but it's not really major or minor, isn't it?
I've never been prouder of you as a drummer to start talking about chords.
I know. I'm a drummer, but I have a piece of paper that says I'm actually a musician. It's somewhere in this room.
Brilliant. Excellent. The power chord. And what it does is quite literally, as it says on the tin, is it provides power. And you just listen to that opening riff and you hear the power straight away. The riff is built from two notes, as Felipe said. You remove the third and you put the root and the fifth, and it just gives a harmonic stability. As Felipe said, the singer might be singing the third note, which tells us whether it's major or minor. The bass player might be playing the third note, but the guitar, most importantly, is playing that stable harmonic, or not harmonic actually, power chord that really just solidifies it, doesn't it?
Exactly, and it makes it heavier as well. So because it emphasizes the first note, the tone, the key of the song more than anything else. Because you normally play the first note, the fifth, and then the octave, which is theoretically the same note as the first one. So basically, basically the key of the song is more in your face, and I think it sounds, in this case, because of the overall guitar sound, it sounds more aggressive as well.
Yeah,
it's quite
it
punchy
does.
chord.
Well, it sounds big. They're easy to play, and that's another thing, is we're not sort of slamming anyone's musicianship here, but power chords are easier to play because you don't need to worry about inversions and chords and all, which note am I playing the third on. And this made it really appealing to emerging guitarists, and as we'll get into later, the punk and the heavy metal movement, because as we keep saying, we're bringing the power to the music.
Yeah. And you couldn't have punk or heavy metal without power chords.
No, exactly. The other thing that these power chords did is it was essentially a very new approach, because in contrast to what came before, if we look at what came out at the time, you're talking the Beatles and Revolver. Oh no, Revolver was a year later, I think. But still, you've got the Beatles, who were moving into the more experimental categories of their pop / psychedelic rock, if you like, experimenting with chords from places like India and unusual harmonic approaches to songs. And the Beatles, being a pop band, obviously had their way of just making a love song. And because it was a sad love song, it would be in a minor key. Making a happy song about holding your girlfriend's hand, which is in a major key. And so the deviation, this was a very new approach to rock music and pop, if you like, if you want to call it that in a little bit. And then if you look at the before that, jazz, blues, classical music, if you want to go further back, all types of music that really, the key of the song, and I know you've been talking about the key in terms of a power chord does throw the key in your face, but analytically, the key of the song matters so much in jazz, classical music, and blues, because as we said, are we singing a happy blues song, which is going to be in a major key, or are we singing a sad one, which would be in a minor key? So this approach was just very
can't be
different
happy
for the
and
time.
singing the blues, lads.
Yeah, that's true. There are major blues though, aren't they? Maybe yeah.
There's some happy blues songs.
But yeah, and the importance of these power chords is, as you said, punk and metal would not exist without them, and we'll get that to later. We'll get onto that later in the episode. But then you had bands like The Who, the Rolling Stones, Sex Pistols, Nirvana, a plethora of bands, we can't even list how many there are, who would build their entire sound around power chords and make whole songs based off it, just like the Kinks have done with You Really Got Me.
Think about the Ramones. It's just that, isn't it? That's all they've done.
Yeah. And further to that, we've just named a few bands, but let's talk about some genres. Power chords became the foundation of genres like punk, grunge, heavy metal, hard rock. It was the key foundation in the guitar playing of those genres, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And this is, if it's not the first song to use a power chord in that way, it's the first famous song. So that's so sometimes people debate, did they actually create something, or is this the first one like this? What matters is the first one that we know of, is the first one that made it to the charts and got
no notoriety.
Yes, exactly.
In the charts and everything, as you said. Cool. Right. So let's talk about the next aspect. And another thing that the guitar is doing that makes this song so famous and unique, the distortion in You Really Got Me. Again, another one of those instances where this is one of the first occasions where we're hearing a distorted guitar tone coming out of 1960s rock. Do you know the story of what happened, and do you want to explain it?
Well, I know that Dave Davies cut his speaker, the amplifier speaker, with a razor. Was that accidental? It can't be accidental.
No, I don't think it
Why
was.
would it have a razor next to your amp?
I know. So yeah, famously, he created this song's gritty distortion, because let's be honest, it's not perfect distortion. When you hear some guitar tones now and you're like, yeah, that's distortion, this was distorted in the literal sense.
Literal distorted.
Well, so he's got, it was an El Pico amp. Then he slit it with a razor blade and started poking it with a pin, and then he connected the damaged amp to a larger Vox AC30 amp, using it as like a preamp. So the smaller amp that was screwed up and slit open, that was like a preamp, providing the general tone to go through a bigger amp, giving you the big distorted sound. And yeah, I mean, very innovative and very do-it-yourself kind of approach for the 60s, wasn't it?
Very punk
as well.
Yeah,
there you go.
So way before punk was a thing. It's like using whatever you've got to make a sound that doesn't exist yet. And that's one of the things that the British bands in the 60s were really good at. Let's figure out a way to come up with a sound that no one has produced before. And why not? Why not damaging your equipment in order to create? Because it could have been something that people just didn't like, and I think it was kind of shocking when people heard that sound. So wait a minute, I never heard that before, and it sounds good, and it's fun.
Absolutely, yeah, you're completely right. And you got to think as well at a time where there was no such thing as distortion pedals, fuzz pedals, studio effects to make that sound. It was like a completely homemade DIY solution, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Very clever. And the historical importance of this, again, it can't really be put into enough words. We're going to do a little timeline at the end of the episode of what You Really Got Me did for rock, punk, and metal. But distortion was one of the first. This song, especially, was one of the first widely heard overdriven guitar sounds. Now, you have, as we said, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and the Who a little bit before, or at the same time as the Kinks, doing their thing, and the Who especially playing slightly harder rock. But to achieve a tone like this, it wasn't really known until this time, until the Kinks did this, was it? And again, this would just pave the way for harder rock songs throughout the 60s and 70s, pushing into punk and heavy metal from the 70s onwards, really. And I mean, it's a legacy, isn't it? It's quite a milestone in guitar playing, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It is. I think every guitar player in the world should learn that riff. You have to. It's one of those, like, it's mandatory. If you want to know what rock guitar is all about, you need to know how to play that riff,
Cool. Excellent. You want to talk about some cover versions of the songs, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Let's get into them.
I'm deliberately adding 2 topics to this episode.
Oh, do it. Okay.
Laz is the organized person in this podcast, and so the top we have a plan every time, but I just sometimes manage to disrupt the whole plan. So the thing is,
and I'm sat there twitching. I'm like,
yeah.
He's fucking around with it again.
Yeah, I'm doing it again. So one thing. It has to do with what you asked, is the difference between the composition and the final product. Do you know how the song was written?
No, please enlighten us.
On the piano. So, because you see the credits, the songwriting credits go to Ray Davies,
yes,
who is not the guitar player, plays guitar, but is not the guitar player in the band. He's the lead singer in the band. His main role in the band is to sing, but he was the main songwriter. But he said at the time he was just getting started with the idea of writing songs anyway. So that was one of the simplest songs he could come up with,
right? And
he was just playing on the piano. And he said the original approach was jazzy. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
A jazzy, bluesy kind of approach. And he has is only a few chords, so it does relate to blues music in a way. The way you stay on the first chord for a long time before you add the changes, and he played it like that on the piano. When he showed it to the band, it started to add stuff, and then Dave Davies came with the amp stuff that you just mentioned, and completely changed the song. Now, they had one first recording of it, which I don't think can be found. I couldn't find it. Okay. They recorded it. The label wanted to release like that. And they said, no, we want to do it a little bit faster, a little bit heavier. And there was a massive argument about that. They didn't want to release the first version of the song Dave recorded. So the producer claims that it would have been a hit anyway. And he actually said, this song could be a hit if you turn into a waltz. It's just but my point with that is, like, I think they had a point. They knew the song was too good, and they knew they could explore more possibilities, because the song is in a way so simple, right? So that was the perfect song to experiment with the guitar, because it's a simple chord progression, simple lyrics, and I think they knew there was a lot more potential, so they insisted on a different. I think they had to fund the second recording session and do it. They finally did, recorded and released the version they wanted. So that's, again, creative controls. A lot of band fights, they fight really hard for that, and that's what they did. So it's a massive difference between the first and the last version of it, I think. So from just piano and vocals to a kind of heavy rock song. Now, the covers, and that's where I believe these topics kind of connect. I actually think the riff is so important that it's more important than the lyrics and the melody.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree.
If you can, check Robert Palmer's version of this song.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to do it now because if you can listen to it, he made it. So he's a, kind of a, don't know if I should say like cheesy pop singer. He had a lot of hits, and but he did a version of this song that doesn't have the riff. And if
I'm
you
listening
listen
now,
to it,
yeah.
feel like it's funky, it's pop, it kind of works. You consider the melody and the lyrics are good, right? Is he singing it?
I've got it. I'm listening
Yeah.
to it. Yeah, very unusual.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, it works, but isn't the riff the main thing?
Yeah, the only
I
the
think
only
this
thing you're
version
getting
proves
here,
that. It's a cool song
yeah,
without the riff, but
but it's not the song.
it's not the song.
Not when you compare it to something like Van Halen's version, right?
Exactly.
Which just takes the riff and amplifies it times 100, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I'm not quite sure if the Kinks were really keen on Van Halen's recording of it, but it did help with that song to become bigger in America.
Yeah.
And when you listen to Van Halen, all he did, in my opinion, was to modernize the song.
I think it's produced.
It's a modern
more
guitar. Yeah, it's a modern guitar tone. It's more technical.
More modern technical solo as well.
Exactly. Yep. So it's got the Van Halen vibe, everything. It's over the top.
Yeah.
In a good way, because they were good at that.
Yeah.
Van Halen was a band that could do everything over the top and still sound good.
Exactly.
So they brought that thing into the song, but essentially they just kept the riff as the main thing. The riff is in your face. Still, I think they even made the intro longer. I might be wrong about it.
Well, do you know what else I noticed when I listened to the cover, the Van Halen one? It's little details like, what's the Van Halen singer called again?
At the time, it was David Lee Roth.
David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
He's American, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yet when he sang the words, there's a few times where he says the English version, which is really difficult. Because I'm talking about,
I never noticed that.
I'm trying to think of a song. Maybe I can't think of an example right now. But if you're trying to sing a song written or sung by an American, because you know the song so well, you're going to sing the phrase like an American would.
Yeah.
So I listen, bye bye Miss American Pie. That's how I sing it.
Yeah.
But in English, I'd say, well, bye bye Miss American Pie. That's not how it goes. Yeah. But David Lee Roth, I've seen him like, I think an American would be like, see, don't ever set me free. But David Lee Roth goes, see, don't ever set me free. And
so
I just felt that
British pronunciation.
Yeah,
I never noticed that.
Well, I've over exaggerated it to prove a point, but there are little words where I'm like, oh, hold on, he sounded like Ray Davies there. Like his tone and his accent was pretty good. But yeah,
just double checking. He's definitely American.
Yes,
you got to double check those things. You never know.
We want to get these things right.
Like Slash was born in the UK, isn't it? So you never know.
Yeah. I'll ask you one. Do you have anything else to say about any other covers?
No. So I think those would be the ones I picked because they're completely opposites. One is more loyal to what the song actually is, and the other one is a completely recreation of it. And I think if you get too far from that riff, from the vibe of the original, it just doesn't sound like the song. So my point would be, even maybe disagreeing with the producer, I don't think you could turn the song into anything and would still be a hit. I think it would still be a great song because the lyrics and the melody are really good, but the riff is the song.
Final question for you in this section: which version do you prefer? Do you prefer the Kinks or Van Halen one?
The Kinks.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Always.
I actually, for me, it's a close second for Van Halen. I'm glad they've done it. They kind of brought that song into different contexts and different audience, and I think they did really well. And it's amazing to see their live versions of it. But I think the original has that atmosphere of Soho in the 60s.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, because they recorded the first version at Regent Studios in Denmark Street. So that's that, you can feel the vibe of that.
Yeah.
The culture of the time. It's part of what the song is.
Perfect. Cool. Well, this brings us on nicely to the next section where we're going to talk about what You Really Got Me did for punk and heavy metal. And Van Halen played a big part in that as well, obviously bringing it to a heavy metal audience. So but it's far before its time. You really got me can actually be considered one of the first ever heavy metal songs if you're talking about music, because as we said before at the start of the episode, it is just that out and out power chord thing. Heavy metal in its zenith, in its early years. Again, there's loads of arguments to disprove the point I'm about to say, but it didn't focus on what key the song is in. Naturally, you'd think heavy metal would be more in minor keys, but it wasn't really about the chord that was being played. It was about the relationship between the notes. Just look at Black Sabbath's first ever song, Black Sabbath. It's not about, oh, that's a minor chord. It's this note followed by that note sounds evil. Yeah. And that essentially laid the foundations for heavy metal. So there's a few aspects of this that I think is really important in what You Really Got Me did for punk and metal. The first thing is the attitude and the delivery. You've got Ray Davies' vocals where he's shouting it. There's a quality of emotion there. It was kind of closer to punk, wasn't it? His vocals than pop at the time. Yeah. There is obviously a melody, but it's not, you don't hear him sticking religiously to this lovely, nice pop melody. It's just kind of a bit more all over the place, isn't it? Yeah. Then you've got the minimalist, forceful performance where actually, if you think about after the first chorus, where it just holds the note and then you've got a bar of just the drum beat before it comes back in, isn't it? Yeah. Minimalist, but it creates a gap for that guitar to come back in a bar later, isn't it?
Exactly. And rhythmically, it's all the same. The guitar rhythm is followed by the bass and the drums. If you listen to the bass drum, the bass guitar, they basically emulating what the guitar is doing. So whenever there's a gap on the guitar, no one is going to fill that gap. It's a gap on everything. And that's an interesting way of writing or creating an arrangement for a song, is the opposite of what the Beatles and the Stones were doing. Every time there's a gap, someone is going to play on that gap, and they kind of leaving space to each other so they can play in between the spaces. With this song, is that one kind of massive sound coming together. Everyone plays the same thing, the same rhythm with the same gaps.
It's a unit.
It's a unit, and that's one of the reasons why it sounds heavy, because there's a lot. It's multi layers of instruments playing the same rhythm, the same notes at the same time with the same spaces in between them. Yeah. So that I think that's one of the reasons why it sounds, and it makes it simpler in a way.
Yeah. Well, talking of simplicity, I think this is the next section I'm going to in terms of the influence on punk, because what this song did so especially well was prove that you could write a hit in an easy way. And that's not in a sense of cutting corners. Oh, this trick helps you get a song to number one. It's just anyone can do it. And this is really significant for punk, because the do-it-yourself ethos of the song was pretty substantial and showed that you could do that. And that's what punk is based on as well. Bands just in their garage who couldn't really play instruments to fantastic virtuosic levels, but could still write good riffs. Basic structure, the directness of the song really mirrors the raw punk attitude of the time, or as in the 70s, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Loud and unpolished. And on top of that, the simplicity made it replicable by younger bands.
And that was
again, like I said,
that was so early into the 60s in a way, 64. So that's not like when the majority of bands were experimenting with a lot of different stuff. They were pioneers for sure.
Very much so, yeah. And following on from punk, the influence this had on heavy metal was that it really did. Forget the power chords. Well, with the power chords kind of important, but forget the simplicity of the song. It was more musical for metal in the sense of, okay, we're going to make songs based on riffs now, not chord progressions, not this chord to that chord, not a melody with chords in the background, a riff. And this was shown after this song. You had bands like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Uriah Heep, all pushing the riff to further boundaries, pushing distorted guitar to heavier boundaries. And then you have Sabbath do it and essentially start heavy metal, February 13th, 1970. And Van Halen's cover in 1978, flashy solos, heavy guitar tone, the glam metal, pre-glam metal production, really tight-knit unit, just demonstrates the seamless transition that this song has into if when you hear Van Halen do it, you think with not with better production, with different production and maybe a different vocal delivery, the Kinks, You Really Got Me could be a heavy metal song.
Yeah, and if they haven't done it like that, if they've decided to stick to the bluesy interpretation they did first, maybe the history of rock music wouldn't be the same.
Wow, history of rock, punk, and metal. It's more than just rock, isn't it?
Yeah.
God, I don't want to think about it. I love metal.
I bet someone would have started that sort of approach at some point, but things would be completely different.
God, can you imagine?
That's definitely one of the songs that shaped modern music the most, I think. It's really, really influential.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, The Who wrote I Can't Explain based on this song.
There you go.
So heavy guitar intro with gaps between the riff.
Yeah.
So it's the same approach.
Cool. Any other sections or categories you want to talk about before I do a little timeline?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go to the timeline.
So now I'm just going to do this little. I'm going to talk you through this little timeline I've written for the song, which just sort of marks what this song did. And we've just spoken about how significant it is to punk, metal, hard rock, even pop to an extent. So 1964, the Kinks release "You Really Got Me." Distorted guitar, the use of power chords, the introduction of a riff, breaking away from clean pop music and clean production, and very much so a blueprint for aggressive riff-driven rock. Then in the late 1960s, you got the rise of hard rock coming with The Who built on this loud, aggressive sound. Zeppelin developing, albeit a bit more bluesy, riff-inspired, heavy music inspired by this Kinks sound. Distortion becomes a mainstream sound now. Zeppelin are using it in all their songs. Deep Purple are using it. Uriah Heep are using it. It becomes a norm for hard rock in the late 60s. Then you got the early 1970s with the proto-metal and heavy metal's induction. Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and Uriah Heep expanding on the riff-based music and essentially making it a bit darker and a bit heavier. You Really Got Me. The tone served as this foundation for metal guitar. And as we said, the riff and the power chord base of the riff showing that we can actually make music riff-based now, with an emphasis over riff over melody that was done first by this song. Then in the mid to the late 70s, you have punk rock's explosion with the Ramones, Sex Pistols, and the Clash all embracing these simple chord progressions, but emphasizing the gritty energy that was coming out of this song. Punk bands cite early garage rock bands like the Kinks as their main influence to, sorry, I didn't mean the Kinks were a garage rock band. I just meant like garage rock punk bands would cite the Kinks as an influence of just being a do-it-yourself, simple, easy guitarist kind of band that inspired them to do their thing. Then in 1978, you have Van Halen covering "You Really Got Me," which is a very massive moment in metal music, because you have this heavy alternative of this song that offers a much more virtuosistic guitar solo, heavier production, and it brought the song into a mainstream audience, like you said, for Americans, for metal audiences, and it almost made it turned "You Really Got Me" into kind of like a shreddy guitar song, which it wasn't at the start, because the first solo is kind of a bit improvised, a little bit bluesy here and there, but Van Halen made it into his own shred thing, and it just showed the song's flexibility and the cross-generational, wider spread appeal that the song had to audiences. Then from the 1980s all the way through to 2000s and the present day, you have metal and alternative rock's evolution, where genres like thrash, grunge, alternative rock continue emphasizing riffs over chords, over melodies, and with bands like Nirvana and Soundgarden relying on power chords and distortion. And as we said at the start, this song is just hard-coded into rock guitar's history. It's one of the first things you could learn. And why is it one of the first things you can learn? Because A, it's so important. B, it's so catchy, and C, it's so easy to do, isn't it? Yeah. And that's why, it's taught to guitar beginners as an essential riff, featured in music history books as a turning point in rock music. What a song.
And you see on the piano.
Yes. Great point. Yeah, so that was just a little timeline I wrote out for when you see it like that, and when you break it down.
Yeah.
How
so all those things wouldn't be the same without this particular riff.
Oh God, no!
But when you listen to it now, because everything has been done after that, you listen to it. It might sound to you like another riff-based song, but it was pretty much the first one.
Yeah, And who, like you said, who knows what would have happened after if this song didn't exist? How long would it have taken for someone? Can I tell you something really crazy?
They were fighting for the creative control of this and wanted
yes,
to do their version of it.
The crazy thing is, there's actually another song they wrote. You should check this out after we've done the episode. It's very, very similar. It's called All Day and All of the Night. And it's very similar in terms of it's just got that power chord riff. I argue it's got a better chorus, All Day and All of the Night. It's a wicked song, and I think that was written around the same time. So even if they didn't write You Really Got Me, they might have done it a month later with it All Day and All of the Night anyway. But yeah, anyway, what a song. Any final thoughts from you before we finish?
The last thing I want to say is if you listen to the live versions of it, some of them are faster. I've sent you one of the links if you can put on.
I'll put the link in the description.
When they play it faster, it immediately turns into punk rock without changing anything else.
Yeah.
And you can see how that song led to everything that came after. So yeah.
Isn't that a fantastic marker? Because as you said, if you play the song faster, you get punk. If you produce it differently and shred the guitar, you get a metal. If you were to put chords instead of power chords, it can be pop.
It seems to be just one step away for a variety of genres.
Yeah.
One step away.
Well put, man. And that is why the song is so essential. So if you're new to rock music and you're listening and discovering where it all came from, this is arguably one of the first songs you go and check out if you want to learn about the history, the genealogy, and the evolution of hard rock music, because this song is responsible for so much that came after it. So yeah, what a song. Excellent, cool. Well, thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. We've hoped you've had a good time. If you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, make sure you scroll down, give us a review, give us 5 stars, write a sentence, because it takes 20 seconds of your time. What it does is each review we get bumped up the charts, we get seen by more people, which is obviously good for us. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all our episodes, all our videos, and all of our content.
Yeah, thanks for your support. Thanks for listening to us once again. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
And as usual, guys, take care and long live rock and roll.